Okay, so we did the video on trees. Yeah. Then we did the video on fish. Okay, the plan's coming together, Barry. I was planning a third video today where I was going to go into the different ant species that exist in One Piece because I feel like that's a fascinating topic I could go on for about 45 minutes on. You know, how many different ant species exist in One Piece? How big do they get? There was that giant ant we saw in the Boeing Archipelago, so what's the deal with that? What happens if ants learn observation hockey or armament hockey? Or God help you, what happens if an ant learns conqueror's hockey? This needs to be discussed. But I felt like that would be too much at once, so maybe we should just break up this series with another kind of video. I don't know. Oh, maybe talk about devil fruits for a discussion. Devil fruits, you know, kind of important to the One Piece story. All right, we'll talk about that today, then we'll get to the ant video at a later date. So, did you guys know that devil fruits are pretty weird? If you didn't, go check out that video I made on why devil fruits are weird. But you know what's weirder than devil fruits? That's right. Devil fruits, specifically filler devil fruits. There's a devil fruit in one of the OVAs that allows you to turn into a train car. I was going to give another example, but no, the one that can turn you into a train car, that's pretty much all it is right there. Actually, that was a movie tie-in, not an OVA. I apologize, right? I actually did a video all about that as well. Not turning into a train car, but a video on all the different filler fruits that exist in filler arcs, OVAs, movie tie-ins, and movies. So go check that out for a comprehensive list. But I was taking another gander at some of these fruits, and on top of being just absolutely bonkers in some regards, which I'm fine with that. You know, a lot of the devil fruits that exist in the canon of One Piece are pretty weird. Some of them, though, are ridiculously broken. Some of them are powerful as all hell. And sometimes I'm even like watching the setup of like, okay, this is what this filler devil fruit can do, and it's super powerful, and it might give the Straw Hats and Luffy some trouble at first, but inevitably, no matter what medium it's in, whether it's like a filler arc itself, which we don't get a lot of filler arcs in One Piece really, and if we do, they're only a few episodes at this point, or if it's an OVA, or if it's a movie, it doesn't matter, Luffy's gonna win at the end of it, because he's Luffy, he's the main character, okay? So it doesn't matter even if it really doesn't make any sense, all right? Because it's like, this is another part of the franchise. Oda's never going to reference this again. The Straw Hats are never going to talk about the time they beat up Douglas Bullet or the time Luffy went King Kongun to destroy the giant kaiju mech, all right? It's just never going to come up, okay? So I think maybe some of the writing process is faltering there. You know, it's just like, let's come up with a really cool design for a devil fruit, really cool powers. The way Luffy wins, that's kind of malleable, let's say. You know, does it have to make sense? Not entirely. The movie has to be over, the filler arc has to end, and the canon has to continue. So, there we go. I wrote down 5 filler devil fruits today that we're gonna go into that I would like to see transferred from the realms of filler to the realms of canon. And that could actually legitimately happen, because a lot of times, even if it's a fruit that's already been used in a movie or something, Oda will just repackage it later, give it a different name. We've already gone through all the different freaking heat and fire-based devil fruits that exist in this story, and Oda ended up using the Netsu no Mi for oven anyway, right? So it's like, he's the mangaka, so he could just be like, yeah, I already knew they used the candy devil fruit in the 4th movie, but I'll repackage it as the lick fruit and give it to Parasparrow. It operates a little differently, he changed how it operates, you know, exactly, it's not a Logia, but still, it's the same basic function, kind of similar to how Gasparde did it. Also, Gasparde also kind of is inspired by Katakuri's mochi, kind of that kind of substance, you know, sort of like he's a Logia, Katakuri's a special paramecia, so Oda can kind of do that kind of stuff if he wants to. But 5 devil fruits today, all right? So let's start off with something interesting. This is actually the only filler arc in One Piece that has a video game tie-in, okay? So that's cool. It's the video game for the PlayStation, One Piece Ocean's Dream. I've never played this game before. However, they did change some things from the game to the anime, all right? I believe this filler arc took place between Long Ring Longland and Water 7. There was a few fillers they kind of crammed in there. I think that actually, you know, there was that, and then after Enies Lobby, there was the Ice Hunter arc, but I really think after those were the last big batches of, like, clustered filler arcs we really got, because after that, it was, like, full steam ahead. We might get a filler every now and then, but it's not very long. We don't get, like, a bunch all clustered together, right? Well, anyway, this is the devil fruit called the Nemu no Mi, or the Sleep fruit, and it was used by Noko in the game. So they changed some stuff around, most notably the fact the devil fruit doesn't even exist in the anime version of this, so I'm literally just going off of synopses from the video game, because in the anime, it was like a magical seahorse flute flute that had the power to, like, you know, take away people's memories and make them dream and everything like that. In the video game, it was a devil fruit, the sleep fruit, which allows you to make anybody around you fall into magical slumber, which you think would be massively useful, especially if it's like you could do it whenever you want. Another big reason why a lot of these fruits are so broken is because they're only used in this one instance. They don't really have a lot of time to flesh them out and explain all of their strengths and weaknesses in a big way, kind of like how it would work in One Piece, right? You know, Oda can sit down and explain, like, okay, this is the reason why Logias are not invincible, okay? Because Haki and all this extra stuff, you might have a devil fruit that can counter a Logia, like the rubber fruit can counter, you know, Eneru's lightning fruit, you know? But in this situation, it's not so much. So you have the power of the sleep fruit to make people fall asleep. Imagine if Noko just arrived at Marineford with that fruit and just snapped his fingers and, like, Whitebeard and all the Marines, Blackbeard, everybody, Luffy, they just conked out. And he's like, I am king of the world! Or he somehow managed to make it to Marijois and just, you know, knocked out all the Celestial Dragons and the Gorosei and all of the CP, and Eam just fell asleep, and then Noko walked up on the empty throne, right? Because at that point, you don't even need to fight. You could just be like, I knocked everybody out with my magical slumber fruit. And then you just take a kanabo or a katana and you just walk around and just, okay, all right, yes, this is ultimate power, right? Also, the reason I put this on there is just based off of the synopsis, because I haven't played the game. Apparently, this is a devil fruit which does not have the weakness to water. Because apparently, and I'm thinking more than anything, maybe they just forgot in the game or whatever, the character Noko is able to swim at some point in the game. Anyone that's actually played the game, let me know. But that was a list in the wiki, like, and that happened, and I'm like, okay, that was probably just an oversight. They probably just forgot, but I'll take it. I'll take it as an actual power. So there's the swim fruit that Senor Pink has that allows him to swim on land, and maybe we might get an exemption with the fish fruits, but no. The sleep fruit, the Noko, not the Noko no Mi, that's not to be confused with the Noko, which actually is a fruit that's used by Musuru, Wapple's brother from the 9th movie, the spore fruit, not to be confused with that. Noko, the user of the Nemu no Mi, no, that's the exemption right there. Have the ability to make people fall asleep, and then you can also still swim. So I honestly put it in there just because of that oversight, or that goof, probably. Like, yeah, okay, it's a devil fruit that allows you to get a superpower with no drawback. That seems like the best one right there. So if this got brought into the canon of the story, if Oda introduced some sort of devil fruit that could hypnotize or fascinate or, you know, make people fall into a magical slumber, that could still very well happen. I could see him doing that. It probably would have the same weaknesses as every other devil fruit power, and he might tweak the abilities a little bit. In the anime version of this arc, it was, you know, this character that had the seahorse, and it could, like, replace, like, give people amnesia and stuff like that. So maybe that's another possibility, like hypnotize them or manipulate their dreams. Maybe instead of a sleep fruit, maybe it could be the dream fruit in the canon of One Piece. And so maybe it doesn't involve putting people to sleep, but maybe it involves, you know, once they are asleep, you can kind of mess with their memory, not their memories, because that's Pudding's fruit, but their dreams specifically. So you can make them dream certain things and maybe influence them in sort of like an Inception sort of way. I could say maybe that existing in the canon of the story. Maybe inspired by the Nemu no Mi a little bit there, but I included that just because it's weird. It's a video game filler arc that usually doesn't happen, and the fact that apparently there was that oversight with being able to swim. So there's that. So moving on though to the next devil fruit, we have Tanaka. Of course you all remember Tanaka, right? He's a fan favorite of the One Piece franchise, right? Okay, well, in case you forgot, Tanaka was the large cat person, bobblehead sort of creature that existed to help out Guild to Zoro during Film Gold, right? And at any rate, he had the power of the nuke fruit. He has the power of nuclear weapons. Oh my god, this cat bobblehead person is the strongest devil fruit in history. Aka Inu, freaking Whitebeard, Blackbeard, you got nothing on the nuke fruit. No, of course, it's not the nuke fruit, like, you know, calling in tactical nukes. No, it's the nuke no Mi, or the phase fruit. It gives Tanaka the ability to phase through solid objects. Although I will say, Maybe I should, because I've made a few videos on, like, the blood devil fruit, or a metal devil fruit, the water fruit. You know, I made videos on, like, theories of devil fruits. Making a video on a radiation-themed devil fruit, that would be rather interesting, right? Like, you turn into Godzilla or something with, like, the atomic breath. That would be cool. The mythical zone model Gogeta. There you go. At any rate, the phase fruit. For most of this movie, this is an example of, like, for most of the movie, it's completely overpowered. No one can really do anything about it. And then, right at the final hour of the movie, when the final battle is happening, they discover a weakness and defeat him in, like, one go, okay? So the phase fruit is kind of a combination of the swim fruit, you know, swimming through solid matter, and then the door fruit, being able to open doors and walk through, you know, walls and stuff. However, it's an upgraded version of that, because you don't have to worry about opening doors, and you don't have to worry about the act of actually swimming. It's quite literally like you're a ghost, you know, like Danny Phantom or some shit, where you can just phase through walls and floors and whatever. Maybe if it's a solid wall made out of sea prism stone, you couldn't do that, but how often would you encounter that, really? I mean, honestly, right? Even if you ended up in impelled down with this fruit, I mean, sure, if you had the sea prism cuffs on you, you couldn't use it, but I think with the cells and impelled down, only the bars are made out of sea prisms. So if the cell is made out of rock or stone or some kind of cement, you could just phase through that, okay? So it's a very, very powerful devil fruit. The weakness that Robin actually ended up exploiting at the end of the movie was Robin figured out that Tanaka cannot phase through organic matter, only inorganic matter, all right? And so Robin uses her Hana no Mi to make a bunch of her arms to grab Tanaka, ensnare him. He can't get out of the hold because he can't phase through Robin's arm because they're organic, and so Tanaka is defeated. Now, I will say that, yeah, good on Robin. That was pretty cool. That was a clever way of one-upping Tanaka. But how often would you encounter that sort of setback? You know what I mean? Like, he can't phase through organic matter, but he can phase through everything else that's inorganic. And so he just happens to go up against Robin that can make organic material wherever she wants in the form of her limbs. How often would you encounter that? Probably not very, okay? Now, what's the limitation on organic, though? Because now I'm starting to think, what happens if you're standing on, like, grass, or you're in a field or something? Would you still be able to phase through that? Because it's like a layer of grass. It's a living thing. It's a plant. You know, would you be able to phase through that? Could you phase through a tree? Most of the time we see this power used is during the Silvermine arc in the anime, where he's phasing through rocks, which, of course, inorganic, and then he's phasing on I forget the name of the giant cruise liner that Guild Tesoro had, you know, or Grand Tesoro, Guild Tesoro. One of them is Gran. I think that, like, Gran is the name of the ship. Anyway, he's phasing through that, which are just, like, metal and the golden pipes and everything, so he can phase through that kind of stuff easy, and, like, the elevators and the stairwells. That's not an issue. But I'm curious on how this fruit would work in that kind of situation, in, like, a pasture or a field, how that would go. But at any rate, encountering, like, the kind of enemy like Robin, that's not going to happen very often, right? So you could phase through swords or bullets or anything like that. It seems pretty damn useful overall, and I think that fruit could definitely be added to the manga. I think Oda could do some interesting stuff with that fruit, definitely. And you can maybe even still have Nico Robin, you know, kick his ass at the end of the day, whoever got the power, right? It'd just be like, oh, you can't phase through organic matter. Well, I will make a wall of arms to block your path, and Robin could do that. Or just make a giant foot and just step on Tanaka. Although that wouldn't work, because you make the giant foot, even if the foot's made out of organic, you can just, like, phase through the ground and escape that way, right? So this might have been another example of maybe Tanaka not being smart, where it's one of those situations where a lot of Devil Fruit users just feel like they're invincible. So maybe Tanaka's like, oh, I can phase through anything, so it doesn't really matter. There's nothing they can do, and if it gets too intense, I can just leave. But you think somebody like that with that kind of power maybe would be more useful for, like, a sharpshooting kind of position from a distance, okay? And then so you can phase through different positions to, like, you know, like sharpshoot and stuff. Like, maybe that would be a more useful thing than how Tanaka actually used it in the movie. So moving on to number 3, we have the More no Mi, wielded by Burn D World. Not Burn D World, Burn D World. Like, it's a pun on Burn the World, but Burn D World, like D-I. I'll spell it up here. Okay, anyway, this is a pretty powerful fruit. This is pretty ridiculous. It gives the user the ability to make things more What does that mean? More! Okay. You got Barry here, right? He's a brick. He's a fabulous brick. And we got Clone Barry 001 over here. Okay. The more no mi would allow Barry to become even more awesome, all right? It's a devil fruit that allows you to increase the size, acceleration, density, mass, destructive capabilities of anything by up to 100 times, okay? So let's put this into practice. Let's say Burn D World picked up a pebble, like literally just a pebble off the ground, and threw it at an enemy. That pebble would increase in size 100 times over, so it's 100 times bigger, but that's not all. He's not just making it bigger. It gets heavier proportionate to that. It gets 100 times heavier, 100 times more dense, and more importantly, the rate, the acceleration at which he threw that pebble also increases times 100. So he basically just turned a little tiny pebble into much larger than a cannonball, traveling way faster than a cannonball, which could absolutely wreck and just demolish an enemy ship with just one single flick. And you don't even have to give a lot of, like arm power into it. You could just be like, more, and then it just multiplies by 100 and then just slams into a freaking building or a ship or whatever, and then boom. And he's used this power with pistols. Imagine multiplying the speed of a bullet times 100 and the size of said bullet by 100. Everything increases times 100, all right? You people out there that know more about physics, you guys can make some calculations to see how devastating that would really be. He took a giant scythe blade and made the scythe blade even bigger. Or you make a cannonball that's already the size of like, I don't know, a large boulder, and you make that cannonball even bigger! More! It makes it kind of silly, and I like the 3D2Y special, which is where Burn D World appears. They actually added a decent amount of backstory with Burn D World and his brother and how they grew up, and that's kind of interesting there. But this is supposed to be, like, this is a level 6 prisoner that was there for, like, 30 years or more than that. This ridiculously strong character that has this ridiculously strong devil fruit that's supposed to be really versed in hockey, beaten by Luffy after like 6 months of hockey training with Rayleigh. It's one of those situations, and it's an awesome fight, and of course Burn D kind of has advantage over Luffy. I think he beats him down twice, and then Luffy comes back in the final round. He's like, hey, Burn D World, I didn't hear no bell. Just like, you'd think that somebody of that caliber, of Burn D World's caliber, would have a level of hockey that would be like Ryuo, that what we're seeing right now in Wano, with that much power. It would be maybe closer to the level of like Douglas Bullet, right? And so beaten by Luffy, right? It's just one of those things where it's like, well, it's an OVA. Luffy needs to win. We needs to beat the big bad and resume his training. So there you go. But that more fruit, that one is pretty damn broken. I mean, there's another one on here that's even more broken. I think you can all figure what it's going to be, but I would like to see the more fruit maybe tweaked a bit in the One Piece story. Maybe not 100 times. Maybe he can multiply things just by 5 or 10 or something like that. I would love to roll this fruit in One Piece D&D. William with this fruit, oh man, that would be crazy. Okay, just a regular bullet would be enough to just level an entire island, essentially. Maybe not that level, but, it would be able to do a lot of mass damage. I don't know. Calculate that. Figure out the standard velocity or acceleration or whatever of a bullet when it's fired out of a gun, and you'd have to take the size of a bullet and how much a bullet weighs and then just multiply that by 100. You know what? I don't know even where to go with this in terms of the calculations and the equations, but I'm going to try my best, okay? I'm going to try my best. Let's do this. Okay, so this was very slapdash, I admit that, and this is only the pieces of this. You'd have to put it all together in an equation to really get the full devastation of how this would go. But I used a 9mm bullet as an example here. So right out of the gate, a 9mm bullet with the power of the more no mi would be 900 millimeters, right? That's a lot of millimeters, okay? In terms of the weight, I found these bullets, they were weighed in grains. That's a unit of measurement I've never really encountered, but the heaviest ones are upwards of 165 grains for the weight of the bullets. So with the more, that's 16,500 grains. But more importantly was the speed. So apparently it seems clocked around 1,500 feet per second for the speed of a 9mm bullet. I guess it also kind of depends on what gun it's being fired out of, but whatever. 1,500 feet per second, okay? Times that by 100, we have 150,000 feet per second. I converted that to miles per second, and that's about 28 miles per second with the power of the more no mi. For reference, the speed of sound is only 0.21 miles per second. This is 28 miles per second, okay? But a little bit short of the speed of light. Just for yucks, I wanted to see how many miles per second the speed of light was in a vacuum. That's 186,000 miles per second, so a little bit less than that. But we have a 900mm bullet that is 16,500 grains that can travel 28 miles per second. How much damage would that do to, let's say, a battleship or a building or an island? Like, would it just, like, hit the island? Would it be like a nuke? I don't know. Calculate that out. But that's fascinating to me, right? And so, of course, in One Piece, you know, it was not used exactly the way that, you know, he did fire guns with it and stuff, but we didn't see the full breadth of really what he could do with that power. And I believe at the end of the OVA, he had this, like, giant cannon thing, and he had a massive cannon, like a rail gun that he was going to use his more powers on to make that even more devastating, but I think Mihawk showed up and just cut it up anyway, because he's Mihawk. Listen, you can have the biggest, fastest bullet or cannonball on the entire planet in One Piece. It doesn't matter. Mihawk's got a sword. You lose immediately. I'm sorry. It could have literally been a cannonball or a bullet the size of the planet of Jupiter. Mihawk's got a badass cross sword. I don't know what to tell you. It's not gonna work. He's just gonna cut it in half, okay? But, yeah, that's the more no mi. I would love to see that maybe tweaked a bit in the canon. Moving on now, we have Bill from the Silver Mine arc. Okay, so Bill has the power of the Gutsu no Mi, or the smelt fruit. I've brought up this fruit quite a bit whenever I'm referencing all the heat-based fruits, but you know what? I overlooked Bill for quite a long time, alright? Bill's fruit, I think, might actually be the most, I guess, practical heat-based devil fruit that exists. Now, what do I mean by that? Okay. Well, you got Ace with the power of the flame fruit. He can control fire. You got Oven with the Netsu. You got Akainu with the magma fruit. Bill's power is all of that. No, seriously. He controls fire, he controls heat, and he controls magma. And we see him do that throughout the course, on top of some other abilities, too. He has the power of heat, magma, and fire, but he can also generate steam. He has the power to manipulate metal, because that's the whole point of the smelt fruit. He eats ore, and then he can smelt it inside of his body, a blast furnace human, and then he can pull out various weapons, swords, axes, shields, even fully functioning, you know, semi-automatic rifles. He can just pull out of his body, and it takes, like, that much time to do that. In addition to that, he can also turn his entire body into silver, or any kind of steel, you know, iron, you know, steel, which, you know, steel is mostly iron, you know, all that kind of stuff. He can just make his body like armor out of that. Let me reiterate what happens in the Silver Mine arc, okay? Because I'll be honest with you, I didn't really even watch it when it was out. I went back and watched it today. So what happens is, Luffy fights against Bill when he's just in his normal form, okay? Bill is just using his smelt powers to eat ore, and he pulls, like, swords and axes to try to fight Luffy, but you get the impression that Bill isn't even really good at using a sword, so Luffy just kind of kicks his ass. At some point, he pulls out a gun so he can make a giant bazooka or a cannon out of that. That's pretty damn nifty, right? He can just do that. I imagine it would be pretty heavy, you know, because, you know, you have a lot of guns that might have, like, wood as a stock, but in Bill's case, everything's made out of metal, like everything, so he can even make complex machinery and stuff with his power. That's pretty useful. He's basically a 3D printer. He's a 3D metal printer that can just make anything he wants, okay? On top of fire manipulation, heat manipulation, and magma manipulation, and steel manipulation. So, that's something, right? There is a major downside, though, and I will get to that in a moment, but, so he pulls all of that kind of stuff out. He tries to fight against Luffy. Luffy just, you know, BAM! Just punches him through the freaking ground, and Bill falls down into the silver mine, okay? And then he hits the floor in the silver mine. Tanaka shows up and is just like, I suppose Guild Tesoro's going to be disappointed in you. And Bill is like, oh crap, I don't want him to be mad at me. And then so Bill just starts like freaking gorging himself on all of the ore that exists in the silver mine, okay? That right there is probably the most major negative, the downside of this fruit, is that in order for you to do all this stuff, to make things, in order to control fire and magma and stuff, you need to consume ore. And in order to control the magma, you have to consume a lot of ores. So it's a devil fruit that requires raw materials, like quite literally. You just can't activate the fruit whenever. You have to have a vast quantity of ore along with you, and then if you consume that, then you get the powers of the fruit. And, you know, of course, that arc took place on an island with the silver mine on it, so, you know, Bill had no shortage of that. But if he was just, you know, on a pirate crew traveling around, what? He would have to have, like, a vast quantity of raw, unrefined ore on his ship at all times, or he'd have to carry it around in a backpack or something to have all this raw material that he could eat whenever he wants. It would have to be something like that. Although that's another advantage. You can eat rocks and your teeth don't get chipped or anything, and you can digest ore. Can you sustain yourself on that? Maybe you can. I don't know. But at any rate, he consumes all of this ore in the silver mine, and then he bursts through the ground. Magma spews everywhere, fire, hellscape, and he emerges as Red Hulk. Yeah! Hey there, Luffy. Let's go round two. All right, and so in this form, he is literally spewing magma. It's not even a thing like with Donacino where he was like, you know, puking up magma out of his mouth. You know, Bill was literally like shooting magma out of his arms and his back, and he was like directing it at Luffy. Like just how Aki Inu was using his Magu Magu no Mi. He is just firing it like giant bullets and streams of magma. Now, luckily, Bartolomeo was there, so he could use his barrier to open up the barrier to block a lot of the magma, but the magma was everywhere. Steam, fire, heat was just billowing off this dude. But it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Bill turns into a tinier Iron Man version of himself, you know, and then he summons a giant Genki Dama made of pure magma, like a giant magma, you know, furnace ball in the sky, and then he just, like, throws that at Luffy, and then Luffy just goes into his Grizzly Magnum and just punches through the magma ball, hits Bill, smacks him into a mountain, and then the entire island sinks beneath the waves in a cataclysmic, you know, volcanic eruption, essentially, and Bill dies. Yeah, Bill was killed. Kill Bill, right there in that arc, so yeah. Look, I understand Luffy had Haki, I understand it was Grizzly Magnum and Gear 3rd and everything like that, but I don't know, you set up Aki Inu as this ridiculously powerful Devil Fruit user, one of the top, even Oda confirmed this, Aki Inu's Magma Fruit is like the top level of destructive power, and the reason it's at the top level of destructive power is because Magma pretty much can break through any kind of defense, except when Bill uses it. There's really, like, it's magma, right? It's freaking magma. That's what he used. It was magma. It's like, okay, well, that's magma, but it's not Aka Inu's magma. I'm like, it's magma, all right? Like, and Luffy should have been hurt by that. I don't think Luffy would have been able to, like, Grizzly Magnum right through freaking Aka Inu's Red Dog or something like that. I think his body would have still gotten burned. But this is a movie tie-in, this is a filler, so okay, just give him this crazy powerful fruit that can turn into magma and fire and heat and all that kind of crazy crap he can do, generate any weapon he wants like a 3D printer, and he fires a giant magma ball at Luffy. Just have Luffy punch through it and win the day. No injuries on Luffy's part, he's fine. Yeah, of course, okay, so it's a filler, but I'm just saying, this fruit, pretty Aha! I caught you! But yeah, Bill's fruit, don't be sleeping on that one, okay? It's actually pretty damn cool what they did with it. And I guess Bill's dead now, so it can be reincarnated into something else. But, you know, it's probably not, now look, he probably doesn't have as much control over the magma that Aka Inu has, obviously, and Aka Inu is a Logia. He also doesn't have as much control over heat as Oven does, and fire as Ace does. But when it comes to just, like, you know, jack of all trades, sort of just like, hey, I might not be the master of any of these things, but I have all of these powers of heat and fire and magma all in one single devil fruit. And the only thing that's kind of a drawback is I have to keep eating rocks. I think, like, as long as you prepare for battle, and if you have a ship that has a large quantity of ore, and, like, the backpack idea, I mean, that sounds goofy, but hey, if that's what you need to have, like, just carry around a giant backpack of unrefined iron ore or whatever, just, alright, and any ore, I guess, would do. The stuff you can make with this, you can make, like, not even just weapons, you can make keys with this to, like, open doors, you know, just it doesn't have to be iron, it can be any kind of ore, you know, brass, copper, gold, I guess it could be anything. You're smelting it down and then forging it into whatever shape you think of. This is actually a pretty applicable fruit I would like to see in the story, although I feel like if Oda did bring it over, he might just keep it as a blast furnace fruit. It might not be anything like, you know, the magma control and all the kind of crazy, you know, Red Hulk stuff that he was able to do by the end of the story. More of just literally the blacksmithing fruit and nothing else. That's probably how it would be done if he got brought over, but, you know, it was still really interesting, and yeah, Bill was pretty cool. He was based on Axel from Guns N' Roses, so that's something. At any rate, moving on now to the #1 most broken devil fruit. That is a filler devil fruit, and if it got brought into the story, oh man, would this be OP. Baccarat's Rocky Rocky no Mi, or the Luck Luck fruit from One Piece Film Gold. I already did a whole video on this one. That one actually has a lot of views and stuff. I tried to wrap my head around how this fruit worked in that video. I basically just arrived at the conclusion that Baccarat has the ability to manipulate space and time. Like, it's a reality warping kind of fruit. In that video, I think I used an example of, like, throwing a dice, and she can manipulate the dice. You know, something to understand is, like, when you start to really think about the concept of luck, think of it this way. Let's say, hold on a second. Let me pull out one of my dice. I got my D&D dice bag over here. Okay. So, let me put it this way. All right, let's say you have, you know, this is a D12. All right, so you have a D12 and you roll the D12, okay? And you say, well, it's in Lady Luck's hands, whatever it's going to come up. It's going to be 1 out of 12, but I just have no idea what it's going to be. Lady Luck. And I rolled a 9. Okay, well, here's the thing. Depending on the angle at which I threw that dice, depending on things like there's no wind or anything, but depending on that, depending on the surface, you know, an uneven surface, what the angle of the surface is, the angle that the dice hit the surface, the dimensions of the dice itself, dimension the dice! You know, depending on all those factors, you could calculate that it was going to land on a 9, all right? But the idea of luck in that particular instance is that humans, you know, when I throw a dice, I can't calculate all that crap on the fly. But with, you know, you could calculate it in a controlled environment. You could throw a dice, you could have a machine, like a robotic arm or something, that could throw a dice at a particular speed, at a particular angle, on a particular surface, with a particular dimension, and whatever, and you could calculate every single freaking time what number is going to land on that dice, okay? So in that sense, luck only really because humans can't, like, calculate all that stuff instantly, okay? So it's more for human perspective rather than the universe, okay? Because in that sense, things like luck, it doesn't really exist in that context, okay? But in the terms of how it works in an anime, in Film Gold, is that Baccarat activates her power and steals the luck away from other people. So all of a sudden, you know, it doesn't matter, you know, how she fires a bullet or whatever from a gun, it's going to hit you crack shot no matter what. You know, if her enemy is standing over there and she has her pistol, she could literally fire the pistol behind her and it'll bank off of 15 different things and, like, hit somebody's armor as, like, helmet, like, put what? And then ping, 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 and then hit the person she was initially aiming at. Okay, so that's the power of the fruit. When she activated this power against Sanji, I think his cigarette fell out of his mouth and his entire, like, suit just flamed up like it was made out of freaking, like, soaked in kerosene or something, you know, so she just made his outfit, like, extremely flammable. That doesn't make any sense. She made a banana peel appear out of nowhere and the person slipped on the banana peel, you know, like freaking, you know, Wile E. Coyote, like, you know, Warner Brothers style or whatever the hell. Yeah, so that's the kind of stuff it can do. You know, it literally just warps reality in the context of what happens. Now, the way that Usopp was able to defeat her was very clever. What he figured out was there's a limit to how much luck she can actually have at a time. So if she uses up all of her luck in one instance, she has to, I guess, gather more luck up before she can use it again. So Baccarat preferred to use a coin in order to fight her battles because that was one of her downfalls. She thought she was so invincible. She's like, I don't even need to fight with a proper weapon. I could just take out a coin and just fling it around the battlefield, and wherever the coin lands, it'll hit somebody, and then that person will fall backwards, and that person will hit a tree, and the tree will fall down, and that tree will slam into a metal pillar, and the metal pillar will be supporting a giant structure, and the giant structure will fall down and wipe out an army of 10,000 that are advancing. That's the power of the fruit, right? But because she always used that damn coin to fight, that's going to require a lot of luck energy in order to defeat an enemy with just a coin, right? And so what happened was she fired a coin at Usopp. Usopp fired a special, a special pachinko shot that turned into a slot machine. Film Gold was a little weird. And so the giant slot machine is heading toward the coin. The coin lands perfectly in the slot of the slot machine, pulls down the lever, hits the 777 jackpot, and then boom! That was a 1 in a billion, 1 in a trillion kind of shot. For her to fire off the coin, for the coin to go into a slot in a moving slot machine, for it to pull the lever, and for it to hit the 777, that used up every single ounce of luck that Baccarat had, and at that point, she was able to be defeated. Okay? So, that's how it is. Basically, you're adding a whole new kind of energy or power in the world, like luck energy, luck power, and so every living thing on the planet has a certain degree of this luck energy, and she can manipulate that luck energy, and when she has enough of it, she can literally warp reality. She can turn somebody's suit into a flammable suit. She could, make somebody's armor rust away and fall apart, even if it was in pristine condition a few seconds before. She could just walk into a room, and like 1,000 people could fire at her with rifles, and every single shot will miss. Like there's an invisible force field around her. She doesn't even have to move a single inch. It's like food luck from Toriko, and we all know how kind of crappy that was in terms of like manipulating the story, right? So yeah, there you go. That's Baccarat's luck fruit. Yeah, pretty broken, but if it was in One Piece, I would like to see Luffy fight against that, okay? I would like to see how that would go in the One Piece manga. If anything else, I want to see Oda, how he would spin it himself, right? Ah, man. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This is Barry, this is Cyborg, not Cyborg, Clone Barry 001. Ooh! We should do Cyborg Berries next. Yes, indeed. I should also mention that. I think I said that before. But the sales of the clone berries went very, very well. Everybody should be getting theirs by June. I was also talking to a representative over at Teespring, and I'm thinking about maybe making it sort of like maybe a once or twice a year kind of thing, where maybe some new limited edition berry merch can maybe come out. Because there's some other options on the table here, like berry pins and stuff. I'm a big fan of Good Mythical Morning with Rhett and Link, and something that they do with the Mythical Society is like every quarter of the year, I think they do it, there's like some new swag that they put out that people can get their hands on, okay? So I might maybe do something like that with like Tekking101 merch, maybe like twice a year, maybe, quarterly, maybe something like that. Some new merch will come out. But there's some possibilities here for some interesting ways that Barry can be marketed. So anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. This will be Tekking101 signing out. Later.